Okay, everybody, welcome back, and welcome to our CEO Roundtable on development scenarios for the new global energy order. It's my pleasure and honor to ask our friend, leader, Roshan Najaf, the president of SOCAR, to provide his introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Matt. Thank you, dear colleagues. Almost 1 year ago, we were sitting here and discussing the volatile energy markets and discussing what should we do in order to secure. I hope nobody is hurt. Last year we were discussing how to ensure energy safety, energy security, how to supply gas and other commodities to the clients, to the countries they need it. And in that same period, we were realizing that for many years, for last decades, we were underinvesting in oil and gas production, energy production. And again, now when there is a little bit easiness, we are also talking about transition, about 2050, how it will be in 2050. But the clear path, the way how we are going to reach it, it's still unclear, and there are different opinions. Sometimes these opinions are in different poles, so they're totally opposite. In that sense, I would like to bring to your attention what SOCAR and Azerbaijan is thinking about that. First of all, we do understand that we should take actions in order to save the planet, to save the climate. We do understand that energy security is important, and we do understand that there are people who still have not access to basic energy and utility services. We also do understand that there are countries who can switch to higher capex energy sources very quickly, but there are countries that cannot afford it in the short run and even in midterm. But we also have to think about these countries. So energy transition and ensuring a sustainable world, sustainable development, it's not only about 5, 10, 15 countries. It's a global issue. It's concerned all countries. And in that sense, we have to think about future generation, but we cannot forget and we cannot ignore the current generations that also have the right to get access to basic utilities, to have decent life, to work, and to the countries that also have the right to develop. In that sense, our understanding that oil and gas will be there, will be the part of energy, mix of energy portfolio, but it will be also mixed with renewable sources, with new sources of energy. But we have to explore, we have to produce oil and gas in a sustainable manner by reducing emissions, by utilizing the new available technology, equipments like carbon capturing, sequestration, and other new innovations that still to be invented or to come to the market. So we are supporting the idea of reducing emissions. We are supporting the idea of sustainable production of hydrocarbons, and we are supporting the idea of exploring and developing renewable sources of energy. So this will be a perfect mix that will ensure energy security, because energy security is important. Once again, we cannot talk about energy security only when emergency happens, only when storages are not full, or when the prices are very high. This is something that should be in place all the time, and we have to work and we have to plan our strategies, our programs, so that energy security by sustainable means, affordable energy is always there. In that sense, we support our energy partners, we support ADNOC, and hopefully this time COP28 will come with tangible results, which will be based on real assumptions, which will be targeting the just transition that ensures interests of all countries, of all nations, of all generations, future generations, as well as the existing generations. And just transition is something that we jointly as energy companies have to work on. And SOCAR already is embarking on that journey. We last year signed within the framework of Baku Energy Forum last year, but in Shusha with BP, with Masdar agreements, MOUs. Later on in January, we signed joint development agreement with Masdar that envisage production of renewable energy. And this is just a starting point for SOCAR because we are very keen on working with the partners in increasing the number of the projects we are in, increasing the types of the projects, because we are currently discussing also production of green hydrogen, production of green ammonia, how we can convert our pipelines to the source, to the vessels that can carry also green energy or green hydrogen and green ammonia. And SOCAR is also participating in several projects with the partners that looks at decarbonization of midstream, upstream, and downstream activities in Azerbaijan. So if we talk about two poles, one pole saying that it should be no oil and gas, and another pole saying no, it should be oil and gas that has been produced conventionally, we are saying that none of these are true. We should find a way to produce hydrocarbons in a sustainable manner with very low emissions, and we also have to secure the energy security. We also have to look at other opportunities. And that also comes not only to availability of technology, but also human capital and people who can think clearly, who can lay their strategy clearly, and the strategy that is based on real facts, real assumptions, and doable, achievable targets, KPIs. Otherwise, we will be committing to the targets that are unachievable, and then we have to explain to our shareholders, we have to explain to the communities, to our people, why we didn't achieve it. But actually, we know that this is impossible right away. That's why we have to put the clear targets. We have to put the targets that are justified by data, because we do like talking about data-driven decisions. So energy transition should be also based on data-driven decisions, not only about our wishes. Of course, we would like to have very clean planet that is similar to the planet when it was like maiden, I don't know, 5 million years ago, but it's impossible. That's why we have to be cautious. We have to strive for climate protection. We have to decrease CO2 emissions, carbon footprint. We have to try to achieve zero emissions, but do it in a strategically designed way, and this way should be based on the data. And in that sense, SOCAR is there. We are open to discuss with the partners, with communities, with stakeholders, how we can be helpful, how we can jointly discuss a way forward, because not single energy company can change the sector by itself. We should cooperate, we should collaborate. On the other hand, no energy strategy or energy targets, KPIs, can be taken or can be imposed without energy players or energy companies being as a part of the decision making. Because it's the energy companies that at the end have to implement, have to realize it. And in that sense, targets, KPIs, and goals that we are striving to should be, again, realistic ones. And in that sense, SOCAR is open for discussion with the partners, and we are thankful for the partners for discussing such issues. I would like especially, like all the participants here, we have such discussions about sustainable production of hydrocarbons, about decarbonization with the partners from BP, from TPAO, from ADNOC, and from all others in Total. So all industry players do understand the importance of decarbonizing, of reducing emissions, but we also do understand that we have to protect current and future generations, and we have to ensure energy security. So this is a nutshell about the current landscape that we see and SOCAR's position in this landscape. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Roshan. Unarticulated but suggested in your remarks is the fact that energy companies often are treated a little bit too harshly, maybe, by the market, because it's not the production of the energy that creates the climate change, it's the consumption of it. And so getting democratic, affordable access to energy, as Gordon Perel was also talking about with his trilemma, is essential as well, because ultimately it's the consumers who inhabit the planet, and at the same time, the planning is underway, as you described at SOCAR, to contribute to the energy transition. I just think back to a couple of years before you joined SOCAR and were Deputy Minister of Economic Development. I innocently asked you, does Azerbaijan think at all about displacing natural gas for power generation and using renewables? And you said, yes, very quiet. Yes, we're developing the criteria, developing the plan. That was it, and here you are. You've arrived and have some regional leading renewable projects, creating the real balance. Thank you so much, and thanks for the honor of being here on the panel together with you. And KPIs are important, and BP lives by KPIs, and Ruslan will tell us more about KPIs in a moment. We'll turn to Gary Jones right now, but as we said in the opening panel, I mean, all of this amazing evolution and revolution of Azerbaijan was possible really only because of the partnership between BP and SOCAR. And I also, from my government days, considered BP an absolute partner as well. We did our best in the US government to help the countries and the companies develop an international legal framework and a commercial framework that made the investments possible. So for decades, I want to thank you, Gary, and BP for all the collaboration. Turn to you now. I understand you'll show a video to begin with. Is that correct? Gary? Yeah.
Got a video, is that on? Yeah. I'll just say a few words first. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this morning. Roshan and I were saying it just seems like yesterday we were sitting right here talking to people about the challenging world and the energy transition, and my goodness, what a challenge the last year has been for all of us. I think you heard this morning why it's so important we have this Energy Forum Week here in Baku. The mixing of the companies and the countries and the governments that we have coming together, because this is a very complex problem that we face, a very complex situation. And as we said, no one company or one government can fix it. We've all got to work together and get aligned. And we heard, I thought, a lot of passion this morning for the reality of the different situations different countries find themselves in. And Roshan is absolutely right that we have to remember that energy is the thing that lifts people out of poverty. And whilst some parts of the planet people have the luxury of not worrying about where their energy is coming from, there are many parts of the world that are still living without the basics for sustaining life. And our job is to lift people out of poverty. So I think the conversation is about an and, not an or. So we believe, as Roshan described from SOCAR's perspective, no one doubts the final destination, where we're headed to a low-carbon energy world. And I think the main debate is around the pace and how you achieve it, addressing security, affordability, and greener energy. So that's, I think, what the discussion that we're all in. So for ourselves here, and you heard it from Gordon this morning, we believe Azerbaijan and this region is a good representation of BP's overall strategy. We are continuing to invest in oil and gas projects where appropriate. We are looking at decarbonizing them, so addressing the emissions from that production. At the same time, we do see gas as a transition hydrocarbon for the future as we transfer over into the renewable energies. And so here, you heard this morning, we've been investing for 30 years. The giant ACG field has been absolutely a bedrock of the transformation of Azerbaijan, and we're very proud of that. And just this year, we're delivering the next stage of ACG, which is our ACE Azeri Central East platform. You can actually see it. The top sides are in view from right here. They're jacked up, ready to go onto the barge, and we installed the jacket earlier this year. But rather than talk more about it, I thought I would bring it into the room and show it to you to give you a little bit of break from the talking. So we've got a very short video that just shows you the ACE project and its journey. If we could play the video. So I think it really is a proud moment for all of us, and it represents the human capability we have in the company. Over 93% of our people are Azeri, and you saw 8,500 people involved in the construction of that facility. But the important thing is it's a very modern facility, a significant amount of automation. It can be controlled from shore. It will be started up from the Sangshell terminal, and that's important because it reduces the amount of travel, it increases the reliability, there's less shutdowns and turnarounds, which means less emissions overall. And the technology that's been involved in that is all aimed at reducing the hydrocarbon footprint from basically an oil production project. And our other big project, Shah Deniz, is also, we're very pleased with the progress on it. It's been hugely, as you heard this morning, hugely important in the diversity of supply, as it turned out, with the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, that came on right at the end of 2020. And this year we'll get up to full capacity of 26 billion cubic meters per annum. And we're continuing to debottleneck it and look for more opportunities to increase the gas. But at the same time, on Shah Deniz, we're also looking at how do we decarbonize Shah Deniz. We're now involved in a project which is going to remove the diesel engine power of Shah Deniz Alpha and supply power to the Alpha platform from Bravo from much cleaner burning gas turbines. So all the time we're looking at ways that we can reduce the emissions from our existing oil and gas projects. And as you heard this morning, we're continuing to explore. So whilst we are in a transition, we are still going to need certainly gas for a long time going into the future. So we're drilling this big reservoir potentially below the existing Shah Deniz reservoir. And you heard from the President yesterday of our ambitions to get some first gas from what we call deep gas below the Azeri or the ACG oil field by the end of 24. Now, alongside those projects, we are also now moving into the renewables, and also looking at overall decarbonisation efforts going on in Azerbaijan. And we're very pleased that we worked with the Ministry of Energy over the last couple of years on a decarbonisation plan for the country, which looks at, yes, it looks at renewable energy generation, but it also looks at energy conservation, it looks at transportation and building construction, because as you know, the President has declared that as Azerbaijan redevelops the liberated territories, they want it to be a showcase of green developments. Now, we've worked with them on the plan, but obviously many companies and countries will be involved in the execution of that plan. And a first step for that for us is, as you heard, this solar 240 megawatt solar plant in Jabrel. But what I love about that project is it, again, represents the holistic view of the energy transition, because the plant will be based in Jabrel, the electricity will go into the grid there, but we will offtake the equivalent amount of electricity for the Sangshell terminal so that we can electrify the terminal, and the gas that we're burning there can then be exported down the Southern Gas Corridor to Europe. So it's a great example of how the transition works across the gas and the renewables going forward. We're also thinking about the future skills that we're going to need. So we've created with the Oil and Industry University, Azerbaijan State Oil and Industry University, a master's program in renewables energy, and the first students will start that course later this year, because we're going to need new skills as we go through the energy transition. So I think all of these things demonstrate our commitment to the energy transition in a way that is secure, is affordable, and is moving towards lower carbon. But as we heard very clearly this morning, this needs to be thought through, worked carefully to ensure that we bring everybody with us and that we don't put people in a situation where they can't rely on getting the bare essentials for life. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And one statistic, by the way, that just flashed for a moment on the screen of the video was 25 million hours of construction with no injury. That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. There's so many questions I want to ask you, but I think the video ate up a little bit of time, but it was a fascinating one. But I'm watching the clock very carefully. So if it's okay, I'll save you the torture and then move on to Melihan Bilgin, who is the CEO of Turkish Petroleum, the president and CEO. And I had mentioned how closely the U.S. government had worked together with, of course, with BP and with the governments of the region a couple decades ago to get the oil and gas pipelines going. But of course, TPAO was there every step of the way. The Turkish-U.S. team behaved like one team. I mean, even our strategic objectives were fully aligned, and I saw more of my colleagues at TPAO and the Turkish Foreign Ministry than my own family. So, Melih, please let's hear about TPAO.
Matthew, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to express my pleasure to address you, the esteemed members of the oil and gas industry. There was something I said here last year. If I may, I would like to start by sharing it with you again. Last year, I talked about Sakarya gas field project. Here are the same headlines. Let me repeat. Such a huge program under very strong political leadership. Normally, this program could be taken like 8 to 10 years, but we are doing it within 2 or 2.5 years. We are bringing the gas to the system as early as possible. This is our commitment. That's what I said. Dear guests, as we promised, we have completed the first phase of Sakarya gas field development project in 2.5 years and supplied gas to the Turkish grid. It is aimed to produce 10 million cubic meters of gas per day in the first phase of the project, and to increase the production to 40 million cubic meters per day in second phase, which has already been initiated. Added to this, in our works that we carry out simultaneously with the Black Sea, we have made a 1 billion barrel oil discovery, the largest ever onshore hydrocarbon find in Turkey. The exploration well drilled in Gabar, located 20 kilometers from Cizre, was pleasing for us. we have now begun producing oil from cement-covered areas allegedly devoid of oil, which had to be abandoned due to terrorism. My dear colleagues, these achievements motivate us. Despite the developments that have deeply affected the oil and gas sector, pandemic, economic crisis, etc., in recent years, we have achieved these successes. With your permission, I would like to share with you how we have achieved these and the future successes in our short time and under such difficult conditions. First of all, I would like to briefly share our basic strategies with you. Actually, we have three basic strategies: portfolio optimization, digitization, and value generation. We have worked around these strategies and managed our processes. What is the smartness beyond this? I will tell you the 5 key elements to my mind, to my knowledge, for being smart. I think the very first thing is the coordination. You know, we are facing against giant problems: demand and supply problems, energy security, sustainable economic growth. You know the sustainability. If you look at all those together in one picture, we see giant coordination needs between the governments, between the energy companies, between the governmental organizations and the societies and the media. The first, I think we should, one way or another, we should stop cursing and blaming the industry, but we should find out some way to coordinate between those sides. The second is the execution. Execution is about the decision-making. These giant problems are very unusual, unexpected, and extraordinary. The extraordinary problems also take extraordinary solutions. One way or another, for rapid solution, I believe prompt and effective decision-making process is the only way to develop such mechanism. In addition, timing is very essential for rapid processes. Doing the right things in the right time for rapid action, recent geopolitical conditions having us to take rapid actions. Through the system, to meet the market demands. Yeah, I think the timely manner action, you know, the prompt actions has irreplaceable values beyond and behind that, you know, all those other elements supposed to support those timely manner actions as decision, as financing, as planning. Another element is planning. For optimizing solutions, we have to develop macro perspectives to model market demands and supply. Through such models, detailed project has to be planned and macro-managed accordingly. Redundancy plans are very crucial at that point. We should always take into account Plan A, Plan B, in some cases Plan C together. Finally, financing. Those extraordinary problems desire huge resources, human resources, financing resources, and of course, the time resources. As you know, there are two basic variables we can control, we can find, and we can manage: human and financial resources, but we cannot change the time, but we can do better with human resources and the financial resources. Finance has always been limited resources, but the prioritization of such responsibilities always has to have top priority. Lagging effect can open up another detrimental issues which would be hard to overcome. To sum up, we have combined smart technologies with global intelligence, spotting the risks, capturing new opportunities, and reporting a real story of success. Our aim is to build long-term resilience, energy security, and a better tomorrow for our country. We are ready. We have planned our strategy according to our goals. Distinguished guests, despite all these achievements, I think we need to develop very agile structure in order to meet the current demands as industry. With the traditional structures and approaches, there is no way to overcome those risks such as climate changes. Here, every country and every company has responsibilities in this sense. Esteemed members of the energy sector, we must transform our energy system to make green, smart, and affordable solutions. It is time to build the climate-neutral integrated energy system. I believe that energy is the nexus, not only for connecting groups in new ways, but as the source of strategic innovation for a net zero economy. Dear colleagues, as it is expected, the gas and nuclear can play a central role in helping power sector to reach net zero by 2050. Natural gas is still likely to be required in the medium to long-term energy transitions from fossil fuel towards renewable generation. As a result, the energy sector needs a transition as an integral part of modern life for the sustainability of the world and a clean future. I believe that we will fulfill our responsibilities with the opportunities provided by technology by taking steps to achieve the goal in cooperation. This energy transition is sine qua non for energy security. Dear guests, I hope Baku Energy Week, which has become a tradition, will provide new opportunities for cooperation and new horizons for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Bilgin. You're exactly on time, by the way. Congratulations on the discoveries. To put it all in perspective, right? I mean, the Sakarya gas field is the largest natural gas field ever discovered in the Black Sea. 1 billion barrels of oil, there's 6 billion in Azeri Chirag initially, as I recall. So 1 billion discovered in Turkey, Turkey, which is not considered, it has never been a big hydrocarbon producer, is significant. And it'll really, hopefully, help with Turkey's balance of payments. I just want to ask one really brief question, though, to you, Melihan. Is there planning underway at all for the natural gas to be exported into the neighborhood beyond Turkey, let's say to Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, or are you focused on using it for domestic consumption?
As you all know, Turkey is consuming the natural gas. 99.9% of the natural gas is required for Turkish oil and gas. So there is a huge domestic market in Turkey. But some limited portion will also be considered to be exported to the European market as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Melihan. I'd like to turn now to Ruslan Alekhanov, getting back to the point about KPIs. I don't know how many people in this room know about the Azerbaijan Investment Holding, but Azerbaijan is undergoing a powerful, deep reform of its state-owned institutions. And the man overseeing it all, at the head of the holding, is Ruslan. Ruslan, how's that process going?
Thank you very much, Matthew. First of all, it's a great pleasure to participate in this event. I would like to thank Roshan Najaf for his kind invitation. I welcome all the guests, especially the ones who have come here to Azerbaijan for the first time. Azerbaijan Investment Holding was set up in 2020 on August the 7th with the explicit aim of improving corporate governance in state-owned enterprises in the Azerbaijan Republic. We have 12 companies in our portfolio, of which obviously by far the largest and the most important is SOCAR. But we also have companies such as the Azerbaijan Railways, Azerbaijan Airlines, Azerbaijan Shipping Company, Port of Baku, etc. Insofar as the work of AIH is concerned, supervisory boards have been set up in all of the portfolio companies. We have set up a new approach to budgeting, a very strict approach to definitional strategy. We have defined KPIs for all of our portfolio companies, and we are steering our companies to a new level of profitability. I hope that as a result of this, last year, out of 8 commercial companies in our portfolio, 6 have shown record results, historical record results, and 2 have shown third best results. One of the companies that has shown the best historical results is SOCAR under the guidance of Mr. Najaf. Its EBITDA hit record level, and it also substantially reduced its debt profile. I obviously know all the numbers by heart. I'm a chairman of the audit committee of the company, but before we publish the financial results, I would like to steer away from actually mentioning those. As far as SOCAR is concerned, SOCAR has also provided a great amount of public service, including the largest payments to the tax authority of the Republic. And going forward, we would like to support SOCAR in our thinking across three most important elements. One is, if you look at this from a country perspective, is resources. Azerbaijan is blessed by having oil. Obviously, you have heard discussion from our colleagues. Gas. It has the second largest potential in offshore wind on the planet, right after Australia. It's north of 153 gigawatts. It is also an attractive location from a standpoint of solar. We have relationship with Aqua and Masdar that you've heard about. Second, our approach to capital management is pretty strict. We have financial discipline that is almost embedded in our thinking. You may have heard our esteemed Mr. President voice it, that our debt to GDP does not have to exceed 10%. And we're one of the most financially conservative nations on earth from this perspective. Needless to remind, there's about $50 billion in SOFAs, and there are other resources that the country has. Second, in our approach to management of the capital, which we believe is a huge issue, in addition to the discussion about management of resources, we have seen very few gyrations in the cost of capital of this scale in the past 20 years, right? Last I remember is actually 80s and Paul Volcker trying to manage double-digit inflation. From this perspective, I would like to turn to the third most important aspect of our approach to attracting and speaking to investors, and that's our legal framework and our overall stance towards contracts. We believe, just like in old Roman days, pacta sunt servanda, a contract is a contract, and I believe we're one of the very few nations on the earth that hasn't changed a single word in the PSA. The reason why we think about this in this perspective is that in addition to unpredictability in commodity cycles, in addition to unpredictability in capital cycles and capital cost, the last thing you need is legal unpredictability. Especially as we see it, the cost of capital is multiplied by the difficulty to implement these large-scale projects. I'm sure my colleague from BP can mention this, but just in this, in the Caspian Sea, we probably have the most complex from a technical standpoint project on Earth called Kashagan, and as far as I understand, its cost is north of $120 billion. With these kinds of mega projects, a super attention to management of contracts and obligations is extremely important. So my last point on this, in this regard, I would like to piggyback on a comment made by my esteemed colleague Gary about the fact that we've heard a lot of discussions about peak oil and the end of the era, et cetera, et cetera. For those of us who have been in this business for a bit of time, we'll still remember a few funerals of the fossil fuel business. My first funeral of the fossil fuel business in which I participated was in 1999. There was a famous cover on the Economist, and basically proclaimed that it was called "Drowning in Oil." It's proclaiming that that the development of internet and new technologies will pretty much impact the fossil fuel business. In 2003, The Economist published a new edition, and it actually said the end of era of oil, or oil era, something like this. And it referred to a famous comment by Sheikh Yamani, who is a legendary figure in the oil business, that the Stone Age didn't end because of the lack of stones, therefore the oil age is not going to end because of the lack of oil. In 2008, in December, I was in Dubai at a conference, and boy, talk about crisis and pessimistic sort of view on the future of the planet. And just 3 years ago, mind you, just 3 years ago, we witnessed 0 to negative prices in oil, right? I just checked yesterday about the consumption of fossil fuel business. We are gonna hit historic record this year, 102 million barrels per day. And I fully agree with the fact that if we talk about economic activity, there is no resource that is as important as energy to sustaining economic activity. So every time we talk about economic growth, we have to maintain a very strict approach to the energy business. And I would like to second my colleague, Mr. Najaf. I absolutely sign every single word that he said. Whatever we do, we have to do with extreme attention and respect to our planet. So we have to make sure that we decarbonize while at the same time making sure that we are, 3 things, rational, predictable, and therefore reliable to our partners.
Thank you, Ruslan. As the old cliche goes, right, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And so congratulations on EBITDA record levels for SOCAR under your leadership, Mr. President, and yours too, Ruslan, helping to completely restructure the way companies are run so that what matters is the return on the investment for the country. These are precious resources that everybody has to depend on. And we're depending on it all running well as well, to the west of you. So thank you, Ruslan, for all you're doing. It's exciting to have ADNOC with us here. ADNOC is not in the upstream, maybe yet, I don't know, here in Azerbaijan, but it is a leader in technology and low carbon, and so we're lucky to have Musabe Al-Kabi here, who is the Executive Director for Low Carbon Solutions and International Growth at ADNOC. Please.
Thank you. It is truly a pleasure to be here in Azerbaijan. By the way, first time for me, truly impressed. So thank you for your hospitality. The Baku Energy Week is being held at a transformational time for the global energy industry. We are living during one of the most critical junctures in recent human history. The decisions we make today will have lasting effects for generations to come. Let me first put this in context. Increasing energy demand will continue to rise as hundreds of millions emerge from energy poverty and nearly 1 billion people are added to our global family by 2030. In short, we will need secure and affordable energy. We also know that we cannot simply flip a switch on the energy system of tomorrow. All credible energy demand scenarios, including IEA, forecast that hydrocarbons will continue to be part of the global energy mix for the foreseeable future. While we will still require hydrocarbons, it will be critical that we reduce and eventually eliminate emissions from their use. That is a big part of my job currently at ADNOC. ADNOC has chosen to face a global challenge by adopting a positive mindset and working with like-minded partners. Partners who believe in balanced economic growth paired with environmental responsibility. And our industry, in particular, has a key role to play. Because we are deeply involved in the renewable energy revolution, we are among the pioneers of a clean hydrogen. And we are producers of lower carbon energies, such as natural gas, that can act as a bridge in the energy transition. Our challenge is to ramp up and accelerate our investments in the energies of the future while decarbonizing the energies of today. And that's possible. ADNOC's history is a proof that anything can be achieved. At ADNOC, we believed each unit of energy should have less carbon intensity than the last, and we have embraced sustainability since our foundation. And we believe we can do this while providing the world with the energy it needs to thrive. We had a major gas initiative with ADNOC LNG in 1973. By the way, that was the first LNG project in the Middle East, and ADNOC gas processing in 1978. And we have reduced our flaring by almost 90% since those early days. Today, we have become the first major oil and gas company to obtain 100% of its grid-fed electricity from nuclear and solar-powered energy. And we have dedicated $15 billion to landmark decarbonization projects. ADNOC has updated its strategy to focus on low-carbon solutions and international growth. Our goal is to focus on transforming and growing our international portfolio of energy and related products that leverage our strength, namely our existing customer base and global supply chains, decarbonizing our operations through technology and sustainability, future-proofing our business through investment in renewables and low-carbon solutions. Our transformation journey includes expanding our international presence in renewable, petrochemicals, and natural gas. In renewables, we have become a major investor in Masdar, a clean energy powerhouse aiming for 100 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. It has already secured 20 gigawatt, enough to power over 5 million homes. Masdar has an office here in Baku and has broken ground on the 230 megawatt Garadagh solar plant. A fine example of what our nations can achieve when we work together. In petrochemicals, we are building a world-class hub in Abu Dhabi called Ta'ziz. We are expanding Borouj, and we've invested in established international companies that share ADNOC's vision and commitment to sustainability. And in gas, our LNG business is growing, and we are looking for new international opportunities to supply the cleanest burning hydrocarbon. In the decarbonization space, in the hydrogen space, we see immense opportunity. Masdar is spearheading our green hydrogen efforts with plans to produce 1 million ton per year by 2030. And we are building a 1 million ton per year low carbon ammonia plant in Ta'ziz in Abu Dhabi and expanding our capacity to capture CO2 by 500% to 5 million ton by 2030. And we are working with our partners to create a global hydrogen value chains that include liquefied hydrogen, ammonia cracking, and established customer base. ADNOC is on transformational journey to accelerate the decarbonization of our operation, diversify into new energy sources, and collaborate on the way to net zero. The journey started in 2016. The vision was for ADNOC to reliably and responsibly contribute to global energy security while delivering a tangible progress toward the energy transition. The future proof of ADNOC by building a strong and lasting global partnerships. We can only succeed with our partners all over the world. And this is where mutually beneficial partnerships with countries such as Azerbaijan are key. You are strategically located and home to bountiful natural resources. When resources of natural gas are managed correctly, they create wealth, enrich economies, and benefit all of societies. Since 2010, coal to gas switching had saved around 500 million tons of CO2. The International Energy Agency reported in 2019. This was the equivalent of putting an extra 200 million EVs running on zero carbon electricity on the road over the same period. I look forward to connecting with many of you in this important forum and finding a new ways for us to navigate a challenging and building a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Kabi, for an exciting description of so many directions in which ADNOC is working on reducing carbon emissions, getting us ready for neutral 2050. And just for a moment, I wonder, which of those technologies, playing on the theme that's been sort of the leitmotif of much of our discussion, which is the energy's got to be affordable, right? If it's not affordable, there's injustice and people aren't going to use the more expensive energy. So is there a cluster of those new technologies that you're already seeing are the most promising in terms of affordability?
Well, I think in one hand, let's be also practical here. When it comes to the energy and efficiency, still oil and gas is probably one among the most efficient sources of energy. Now we're moving to a less efficient sources of energy, and that will require more of technology development. So when I look at the spectrum of technologies, I think hydrogen potentially has a significant role to play in the future. And in some scenarios, there is a possibility of potentially more than 10% of global energy demand by 2050 comes from hydrogen. So I see a lot of focus on hydrogen technologies, and I'm confident that technology hopefully will mature to enable an accelerated decarbonization going forward. There are estimations that from now until 2050, on average, we need total investments around $4 trillion, and that's a massive, of course, investments. It will require a lot of efforts, global, collaboration. but underpinned by technology development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Going back to more conventional energy, though, to natural gas, I'd like to turn to Uwe Fipp, who's Senior Vice President of Uniper. It's really interesting and great to see, I don't know if we call it a private company or a state company. You're in a bit of a transition at Uniper, but you are a private company. Your soul is a private company. And your presence here, yours corporate and yourself, shows how well, in practice, the European Union and family is reaching out to Azerbaijan to help get to the doubling of the gas that's flowing to Europe from Azerbaijan. So please, Uwe, he has some slides to show.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very good to be back here at the Baku Energy Week, to be back in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, the country we Europeans put high hopes into additional gas supplies, into security of supply. And security of supply since 15 months is on the top of the European gas agenda, of the energy agenda. I think here we in Azerbaijan, we have seen, and it was mentioned many times by the previous and this panel, what security of supply actually means. It means $40 billion investments in developing upstream gas fields offshore in the Caspian Sea and onshore, building the infrastructure, the pipes, TANAP, TAP, to the off-takers in Europe. $40 billion, a project that took now from, let's say, from the first day of planning until realization, 15 years or even more. So security of supply means investing billions, but it also means investing in geopolitics and into trust. And we at Uniper, we have done that for more than 50 years with our Russian partner, Gazprom. We invested into pipelines, we invested into relationship, we invested into Russian power. And we were really taken by surprise by the sudden stop of gas flows into Germany, into Europe, to our company. I think I'll show the first slide. Oops. It's not shown up there. There it is. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Uniper is a gas and power company existing since 90 years. Most of you will not have heard the name because the name we have given to our company exists only since a couple of years. But maybe more famous names are Ruhrgas, E.ON, and Bayernwerk. When the gas flow of Russia stopped to us, we had to substitute the gas. We are the market leader in Germany. We are system relevant. We are supplying our gas to our customers, which are mainly the German city works. We were obliged to continue supplying them. And as you can imagine, with the prices going up to 350 euros per megawatt hour, we were burning cash, sizable cash every day. It was an unsustainable situation, and we had to make use of the German energy law, which allows for the state to step in. We asked our government to bail us out, and this is what happened. It was a very fast and complicated process. We had to, of course, enter the EU state aid process. All that was done by end of last year, and since end of last year, and you see the federal eagle on this chart, since end of last year, we are 99% owned by the German state, after not being 90 years a private company. All our businesses are sound, and the first quarter report, some of you may have noticed, were very positive, and we are seeking to follow the condition the EU laid on us that by 2028, the government share has to be reduced to 25%. But what did we do to cope with the situation of the sudden stop of Russian gas flows? Basically, those were three major steps. The first step was to build the first German LNG regas terminal in Wilhelmshaven. Wilhelmshaven is a site which our company owned actually since 60 years, because already in the 60s we were planning to import Algerian LNG, but it never realized. This was done in a record time of 220 days. The first gas was seen on the 21st December, just before Christmas last year. Capacity is 7.5 BCM of this terminal. Why was it done in a record time? Well, because permitting was reduced to a few days Usually permitting of infrastructure in Germany takes 2, 3, or 4 years. Today, there are 3 FSRUs at different locations in Germany in operation. A 4th is to come, and we see a total capacity, import capacity of 15 BCM this year, which will rise to more than 20 BCM next year. The second measure that was taken by the regulator, was the obligation to fill the storage with 90% by 1st of December. This was achieved, and this also calmed the market down after it turned out that the winter was rather mild. The storage filling in Germany, for example, but in most European countries, is still very high, currently 73%. The third measure is that the fossil power exit was stopped provisionally, and our company made 3 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants available to be dispatched. On the earlier panel, we heard a criticism that coal-fired power plants were put back into the system, but there was no other way to do it, because otherwise we would have faced blackouts. Yeah, so how is the European gas imports doing now? We can see that on the next slide. The imports are recovering. You see the blue curve coming up from a historic low. We still see Russian volumes flowing into Europe, be it as LNG or as gas through the Turk Stream. But we also see that we have a huge increase of LNG input from Algeria and from the United States. This calmed the market, and day-ahead prices are now down to pre-crisis levels, below 30 euros per megawatt hour. This is a major achievement. Yeah, LNG, and like I said, especially LNG from the United States, contributed a lot to substitute the supplies. And you can see it on this chart. The blue-colored bars are the US LNG inflows, which increased massively. The question is, and we discussed that already earlier, will the EU ever become less dependent on energy imports? Well, I can clearly say no. This slide shows the outlook to 2050. There, for example, Germany will still import 80% of its primary energy consumption, and that will likely be blue, green, ammonia, hydrogen in the different forms. But will the infrastructure for that be in place? 2050 sounds very, very far away, but it's actually not that far away. It's 25 years, and some of us are older. 25 years pass very quickly, and building up infrastructure for this sizable imports is comparable to building up the infrastructure for the oil and gas industry in Europe, and that will be very challenging to achieve that in 25 years in such a way. What are we at Uniper planning to help with that? Next to the LNG terminal, we are planning a large-scale ammonia import terminal, which we hope to commission by 2030. And additionally, we are planning to build a gigawatt-size electrolysis plant also in that area by 2027. We expect large-scale blue and green ammonia projects from the Gulf and other regions, and perhaps one day from Azerbaijan, to feed into this terminal and to foster the green revolution, the transition of the energy industry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Uwe. Right exactly on time. That's perfect. German. And congratulations on the tremendous achievement that Germany, the European Union, and Uniper accomplished. And nobody thought this was possible. And like we were talking about in the previous panel, you simply did it. You simply accomplished it. Important for people to keep in mind, too, that Uniper is going to have, as you said, a reduced state share. This was a temporary measure to get through this crisis. And so I'll ask you maybe the same question that I had asked in an earlier panel. How comfortable are you that everything's in place to get through this next winter? How much does that depend on whether it's a mild or a harsh winter?
Well, it does depend on temperatures, that's clear. We've seen the last winter large-scale savings. Industry saved more than 15% by switching fuels to gas oil or shutting off production. There's no more ammonia produced in Germany. So that's there to stay. Also, the savings in the private household, the private sector was strong, also above 15%, but that was largely temperature-driven because we had, luckily, a mild winter. So it will depend on the winter if we see higher prices again. But consumers are very much aware about the situation. Actually, storage fillings are reported in German TV every day. So yeah, there's a high awareness on saving gas, and we're very confident that the next winter will be no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it's all got to be paid for somehow, yeah? And in terms of investment into natural gas, new projects, I know it's really difficult to find any financing. But let's explore more the financing needs. I'm honored to turn the floor over to Patabi Sashaji, who is Managing Director and Senior Partner of the Boston Consulting Group. And thank you for BCG's sponsorship and Uniper's as well, and all the companies here. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. First of all, I wanted to just start by thanking our hosts, Mr. Najaf and Mr. Alekhanov. It's my first time in Baku, and Baku Energy Week has been exceptional. The hospitality has been great, and the discussions have been incredible. Before I get to the point on capital, Matt, I want to just maybe hit 3 quick messages from traveling the world of energy over the last year or so. The first one is that the opportunity here for Azerbaijan, which remains quite big. We in the industry all talk about this notion of last man standing or last barrels in molecule standing. There are legitimately only probably single-digit number of countries that have the potential to have those last barrels standing, and Azerbaijan clearly is one of them. When you look at the cost structure of the oil and gas that's produced here, the carbon intensity of it, and then, of course, what has been emphasized over and over, which is the reliability as a trade partner and the value of contract sanctity. So, this place right here will still be key to solving the energy trilemma as we see it. The second point, second message I want to describe is the energy transition will happen faster than we all think. And nobody has a crystal ball, and nobody in this room can predict it. I've been in a number of these forums, both in open forums and behind closed doors. There's both sides of the debate that gets explored. One side that talks about the fact that oil and gas will be around for decades and decades, and some actually add a third phrase, and decades. And then there's another side of the discussion that we hear, again, in open forums and behind closed doors, which is around the fact that there will be fossil fuel phase down or phase out, and those terms get described as well. The reality of the matter is that nobody really knows when and how exactly the transition will happen. No one, and I'm sorry to say that as your insight partner or your intellectual partner, as it's called here. What we do know, and we go back to the basics of this, which is that change happens in nonlinear ways, and humans tend to project change in linear ways. The two things we look at and look for is what is the structure of the market and where are your customers headed. So in this particular instance, nearly 100% of the molecules from here are pointed west towards the European Union, and the European Union, the 27-member state, has got a 55% reduction target by 2030. 11 of those nations have actually embodied that into their national law. That's 2/3 of the GDP and 2/3 of the energy imports going into the European Union. So I always tell energy companies, clients around the world, make sure to listen to your customers or somebody else will. The other aspect of the pace of change will be faster than anticipated is the technology pace, which also tends to be underestimated. I think we've looked at projections made all the way back to 2020, starting from 2000 on various technologies. Take solar photovoltaics. The actual projections today are right now 36 times what was first projected in 2000, and the costs are 1/3 of what was projected just about 10, 15 years ago. And on batteries, we're off just in 5 years. All of us are off by about 2.5 times in terms of the size of the growth of the battery industry, and we're off by half on the costs, right? So that's, there's a bit of this which you need to also make sure to watch out for the technology progress. What this really means is in terms of what should companies do. It just simply comes down to securing their competitive advantage as best as they can. Here you have great potential to secure competitive advantage that starts with focusing on everything related to what Ruslan and Rovshan have talked about, which is increasing the productivity of everything that you have around you, the productivity of the exploration, the production, the transport, and the capital and people productivity. The second one is around getting as quickly as you can to near zero methane emissions, net zero scope 1 and 2 emissions. I think the bar for that will keep increasing, and that becomes the license to operate for the industry. And then third piece, which is around leveraging the base of renewables here to make the change to the accelerated energy transition. So the setup is great. It's a beautiful setup, and I think the country and where we're sitting here has the ability to extend its competitive advantage. Now, maybe just to get a short answer to your question on capital, it is important to keep in mind that this is all going to take a lot of money, as has already been talked about, the money that's been invested here. We look at what we follow the capital. We look at what is the amount of capital that's being allocated to the energy value chains. We've summed up, bottom up, 250 top energy companies in the world, governments, private equity, infrastructure funds. What is the total amount of capital coming into this space? It's $19 trillion over this decade that is actually allocated to the energy value chains. That's the good news. The bad news is it's about half of what's actually needed for the energy transition. But maybe sticking with the good news of that 19 trillion, a significant chunk still comes from traditional oil and gas companies, about 30% of it. 40% of it comes from the power companies in the value chain, and then the rest, the 30%, now you have increasing play from governments and private equity and infrastructure. And the thing that I try to reinforce in forums like this and other conversations is capital happens to be like water. It flows down to its lowest level, and in this instance, it's the lowest level of risk that the water will flow to and the highest level of return. And so it's important to keep that in mind as I don't believe it is going to be about a lack of capital. It's going to be about lack of creating the structures that enable that capital to flow.
Thank you. And I apologize, I got out of order a little bit. I asked the question in the beginning, but I also unfortunately, skipped over Jean-Luc Guigeot, who's the Senior Vice President of Total Energies. Total has played a huge role here in developing the upstream for years. I remember back when I was finishing up my time here in 2012, it seemed like, Absheron was going to be so far away. You're talking about 2020, maybe it would begin. And well, so much has happened beyond that. Please, Jean-Luc.
Thank you, Matthew, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues. It's a pleasure indeed, effectively, to take part of this forum, which comes at a timely moment in this global energy context that we're unsure how it's going to evolve, but that clearly changes at a fast pace. And no doubt, the Ukrainian conflict has revealed how much, indeed, or how important energy is for our citizens, for our economies, and also how much the energy markets create that interdependency between the different countries. So many of our European colleagues and governments have realized last year that what was a common belief of energy being abundant, being cheap, being always accessible. So how much that was not a given. So the energy security and the energy affordability, as well as we have heard from several of our panel speakers here, has come back, I was going to say, at the top of the agenda of the decision makers as a topic that is as important indeed as the need to decarbonize energy. So our collective challenge, if I may say, is to reconcile energy transition with the need for energy security and energy affordability, which is at the core, in fact, of minimizing the social impact. Because we heard about a just transition, but the transition to a decarbonized energy world will not come without efforts, will not come without investments and price. So the price tag for the customers, for the citizens, will be there. So we need to work together to minimize, in fact, that cost to the society of decarbonizing our world. Total Energies indeed has been at the front line last year in 2022 to respond to this gas supply crisis for Europe. So we did it by leveraging on our global LNG capacities and to become the largest LNG supplier, in fact, for Europe last year in 2022. And as an example, we heard from our colleague of Uniper that Germany in particular, but also France, had to act quickly to develop capacities to receive LNG cargoes and to regasify those LNG stocks. So we have redirected 2 of our floating storage and regasification units to France and to Germany last year. So in this context, which is probably here to stay, of a tense gas supply to Europe, Azerbaijan has a key role to play as a supplier over the long term of a reliable pipe gas. And you alluded to it, Matthew, but we are, as Total Energies, we are proud to contribute by reaching this summer, so in a few weeks' time, first gas on our Absheron field after many years of effort. So it's also the door opening to further developments of this Absheron potential. But this first gas is indeed a significant and a great milestone for Total Energies in Azerbaijan and also for our cooperation with SOCAR. So now if we step back a bit and look at the global energy system, in order to respond to the population growth and to the growing need for energy, we must accelerate the transition to lower carbon energies. But we must do it in an orderly and in a sustainable way. And we cannot simply stop investing in oil and gas. Those investments are required to respond to the market demand and also to balance the natural decline of our fields. 2020, with the pandemic, has been a year where we've seen a significant drop, in fact, in oil and gas investments worldwide. And we see that about $100 billion per year of additional investment is needed in order to supply those markets and, again, offset the decline. So the world of energy has never been simple, but we must admit that it is becoming ever more complex. We have a lot of bit contradictory expectations from a number of our stakeholders, from a number of our societies, and it's a bit uncertain on how this is going to evolve. So how can we, as an industry, as governments, as partnerships, how can we respond to those uncertainties or to address those uncertainties? And the belief is that we need to stick to a number of principles and fundamentals. The first one is to avoid, whether as a company or as a country, to become overly dependent on a single country or a single region in our energy supply. The second one, and that's our responsibility, is to maintain and to develop a broad set and spectrum of energy sources. So the renewables are coming into play more and more into the equation. That's our responsibility. And the third one is to maintain our discipline in terms of capex allocation and cost of production. So those fundamentals are what guide our company strategy. Total Energies as a company has embarked into a significant transformation. We have a clear objective for 2030 on our roadmap towards net zero in 2050. And to put it simply, What we're going to do is that we are going to increase our energy throughput by about 30% over the decade to respond precisely to that growing population and that growing energy need, with half of the growth allocated to gas, mainly LNG, and half of the growth allocated to renewable, to electricity power, well, green electricity mainly, to reach 100 gigawatt by 2030. So these are significant investments, $60 billion to give it a sense of what it means for us as a company over the decade. We have spent $4 billion in the renewable energy and the low carbon molecules in 2022, and this year we're going to spend about $5 billion. At the same time, we will cut down our scope 1 and 2 emissions. That's very important for us as players. We must be exemplary in the way we handle our emissions. We do it in two ways: by investing into technology to abate our current emissions on the existing platforms, and also by designing the future installations to be minimum in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And to that point, Absheron is one of the of the flagship, because Absheron will be less than 1 kilo of greenhouse gas emissions per barrel of oil equivalent emitted. The other topics that I would like to highlight is our sheer responsibility to do everything we can to remove methane emissions. As gas producers, if we want our commodity, which we believe is essential for the transition, to be acceptable and to be sustainable, we need to be exemplary and eradicate those methane emissions. So we are investing very seriously into this. We are sampling through drones and sensors the actual emissions of methane around all of our installations around the world, and we're tackling those ones that that are still remaining. So finally, net zero in 2050 will not be a world without oil and gas. So we also need to invest into carbon storage capacities. We have an objective of 10 million tons of carbon storage by 2030, ramping up to 100 million tons by 2050. So it's a lot of investment, it's a lot of infrastructure. We cannot do that on our own. We need partnerships, we need governments, we need infrastructure being developed, and we are tackling that with our partners. So to summarize our company strategy is clearly more energy. We need, it's essential. It's the blood of the economies, as we heard this morning. Less emissions, but always more sustainable. And clearly Azerbaijan has a role to play in this global energy transformation on conventional energies, but also on the renewables, as we have heard this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jean-Luc. You gave us such a comprehensive picture. I'm not sure I have a question to raise. I mean, you talked about the need for the energy transition still to rely on oil and gas while we're decarbonizing, while we're investing in all the new technologies. And maybe the one is what sort of pressure do you feel from lenders, from the financial community, to move away from oil and gas?
Well, clearly, the financial community and many lenders and banks are under huge pressure from their stakeholders as well to stay away from conventional developments. So it's one of the concerns for our industry. The way we address that as a global company is that we seldom require specific loans for specific projects. So we finance our company globally, and with our transformation, with our roadmap, with our commitments, we are seen as as a company that walks its talk on getting towards a lower carbon world. But it's a concern for our industry globally, effectively.
Yeah, for everybody, indeed. And also thank you for your sponsorship, Total, for our event. Oops. And thank you, of course, to SOCAR and BP, and also to our next speaker, to Ansaldo Energia. Mr. Marco Lovisolo is Senior Vice President and is also going to tell us about Ansaldo's plans for the energy transition. Please, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. So first of all, a warm greeting to honorable ministers, deputy ministers, and also obviously estimated colleagues. And let me thank His Excellency, the Ambassador Claudio Taffuri. I've got some slides, but okay. We are living in a very difficult, challenging times, but let me say also extremely stimulating. We are witnesses, probably like never before, of changes that taking shape day by day. The energy transition is also a technological, industrial, and geopolitical transition. Ansaldo Energia is a manufacturing company that creates technological jewels that are the turbines, machine capable of creating energy. Our majority shareholder, with 88%, is Cassa Deposito e Prestiti, held by the Ministry of Economy of the Italian Republic. Therefore, we are a state-owned company. First in Italy and among the four major global players in the power generation sector, Ansaldo Energia is a compendium of skills since 170 years. The transition and the energy management is one of the main pillars of the environmental changes, and for that Ansaldo Energia is undergoing an epochal change in all its areas. We are present in many areas of the globe with our branches, joint ventures, and subsidiaries. Our headquarters in Italy is in Genoa, an outstanding production and industrial center. We can claim important references with more than 100 power plants. We have built 47 gigawatts as EPC plants, and as turbine technology suppliers, more than 250 gigawatts worldwide. Obviously, we are able to satisfy all the needs of electricity companies, and we do that by a customized approach. Our portfolio is a complete one. The technology used by Ansaldo Energia for the transition are the result of experience and know-how of the highest technological level that we have been building up over the years. Let me focus because I'd like to on the GT36 because I'd like to remember our flagship product. The GT36, each class, is capable to reducing emission by 70%, and above all, it's ready to burn the fuel of the future, hydrogen. I will show also AE 94.3A that allow me to go to the next slide because, as you can see, I would like to mention with great pride the contract between Azer Energy and Ansaldo Energia regarding the supply of 4 gas turbines 94.3 for the Mingachevir power plant. On February 2023, a very important ceremony was celebrated here in Baku at the presence of the Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev, its ministers, and the Italian government delegation represented by Minister Adolfo Ursu, its staff, Ambassador Claudio Taffuri, and the top management of Ansaldo Energia. During this important meeting, the great relation and friendship between Azerbaijan and Italy were sealed. After that, in a wonderful scenario inside the presidential palace, the groundbreaking ceremony for Mingachevir power plant was held. Let me say one more that the agreement makes us particularly proud and proud of the trust placed in us. We are also certain that the furrow has been traced as a label sign toward continued faithful cooperation between the two countries. Again, I thank all the authorities and all the prestigious attendees. Ansaldo Energia is here to confirm its willingness to support the Azerbaijan energy system in the common challenge toward the energy transition. From my side, it's an honor to be here in the Baku Energy Forum representing my company, Ansaldo Energia, a big company that every day is fighting, trying the best way to support and collaborate with this amazing country as Azerbaijan is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. Just one quick question about the technology. So how far away are we from economically attractive hydrogen-powered combustion like you showed for power generation?
With all the respect for the German colleagues, we are already in. Our each class is quite ready to burn 100% hydrogen.
Wow.
And for the other F class, we are 70%. We have, from 10 years, a power plant in south of Italy burning at least 40% hydrogen. So we are ready to support this change.
Exciting.
We
Thank
have
you.
170 years, and we survive the change in every time, trying to follow the request for the market. No? So,
great. Thank you. Very good news.
you're welcome.
And, yep. And our final speaker for this panel is Jean-Paul Marton, who's Executive Vice President for MOL.
No. So good afternoon. It's a great honor and privilege to be here on behalf of MOL Group. I don't think that most of the audience can recall by heart MOL Group and its presence in Azerbaijan, because actually it started 3 years ago. That we purchased Chevron's stake and became the third largest shareholder in ACG. And from then on, in the past 3 years, with the entry, we spent $2 billion in Azerbaijan in the oil and gas sector. And why it's so significant for us, we are a mid-sized company in the middle of Central Europe, based in Budapest. And the transaction 3 years ago was actually literally 2 months before the pandemic broke out. So we didn't really have time to consolidate, but already needed to focus on a changing world. And the last 3 years was nothing else or nothing different as well. Why Azerbaijan is so key for MOL Group, and why we believe that this is a strategic partnership. Because during the last one and a half years, energy crisis showed us as well, especially being as a landlocked country with a landlocked market, that once people inherited from the old era, that the households are burning gas for home. Also, large number of the industry is also dependent very much on gas. So everybody enjoyed the luxury that gas was available and it was cheap. And last year it showed that it wasn't really cheap and it wasn't really available at any moment in time we wanted. So we did our prudent job a couple of years ago to start the green transition and decarbonization. MOL Group announced its strategy to become and transform from a downstream core company to a sustainable petrochemical company with the entrance also to the cyclical economy, burning and collecting also waste on a sustainable manner. But at the same time, the energy crisis hit. So for us, Azerbaijan currently, and the ACG project and the collaboration with SOCAR and the other partners is really a rare combination of stability and flexibility. Because we enjoy here in the host country a stability for the hydrocarbon, stability for legislation, stability for long-term partnership, and the stability for equity oil. And by the time this equity oil is actually getting to our refineries in the middle of Central Europe, to Hungary, to Croatia, and to Slovakia, that stability for us became a flexibility, because we will have a chance to choose from what type of crude we should actually process. We didn't have that luxury in the past, because the Slovakian and the Hungarian refinery, which together produces 14 million tons of capacity, that was largely built for Russian crude. The Slovakian refinery was just solely processing Russian crude. So we needed to really shift, and we realized that this combination of having equity oil here in Azerbaijan and enjoying the flexibility to bring that equity crude home, that is really the top priority for us. So being here in Azerbaijan, it's not only business for us, it's much more. It's going beyond that, because we bring those molecules home. And we also believe that we have a lot of commonalities. We are also an integrated oil company, integrated energy company. We have upstream, downstream. We have petrochemicals business. We operate 2,500 petrol stations in the region, in Central Eastern Europe. And having the value of bringing home the molecule you produce is really something that our strategy will be for the future. So we call it from well to wheel, that we control the whole feedstock, the infrastructure. We have also a midstream company for gas. And we have downstream petchem and retail. And going there, going beyond upstream, we think that the future for MOL Group in Azerbaijan is very bright. We would like to expand our collaboration within the project, or even beyond the ACG project. We believe in long-term partnerships. It's really not a transaction for MOL Group. It's a long-term strategic partnership. We have a lot of decarbonization initiatives with prudent commitments on all area of starting from downstream, leading until the waste concession, which we won for the next decades in Central Eastern Europe. And we are not afraid to share those experiences and those learnings with our partners here in Azerbaijan. So we are again thank you for Tsokar, and thank you for the host to organize and give us the chance to come here and being part of the panel today.
Jean-Bert, just one quick question. There's some confusion, or there had been, in the public domain about your refineries. And you remember when the EU price cap and G7 price cap was coming together, there was concern that your refineries were tooled just to Russian crude. But that's incorrect. You were able to process this sweet Azeri crude?
Actually, in the mid of March, we brought one cargo directly to our. I have actually a map, if you can put up there, so that you will see that we brought that cargo all over, and then we processed that cargo in the Slovak refinery, which were in the past was solely dependent on Russian crude. And we want to be a company in the future who can choose from what type of crude we process on our facilities.
Yeah, that was a key point, the flexibility that you mentioned in your presentation. Okay, so we were done with speakers, but I had skipped Gary on questions. And there's one I really wanted to ask you. In those days, well, a decade ago or so, when everybody was working together on BTC in the beginning in South Caucasus gas pipeline, it became clear that those investments were really profitable for BP. I mean, jewels in the crown globally. In fact, at one point I'd heard that ACG plus BTC together was in the top 3 of all the most profitable projects for BP worldwide. Was that true? And where does all this here in Azerbaijan fit into BP's global portfolio in terms of significance?
Well, I think that you heard from Gordon this morning that this is one of the most significant operations we have across the globe, certainly in terms of scale of activity and complexity. We have a sort of a portfolio where we mix between production sharing agreements like we have here and tax and royalty agreements like we have in the Gulf of Mexico and the UK. And we like that balance of diversity. So diversity is something that's coming through very strongly today. I think we've had a lot of conversations with Rovshan and the Minister of Economy about how do we work together to ensure that we can attract more investment. So what I always say to my teams is, oil and gas is a global commodity. We need to make sure that our opportunities are competitive against other opportunities around the world. And the fact that we're exploring here, the fact that we're looking at more opportunities here demonstrates that we do see this as a very attractive place to do work. But as others have said, it's not just about the returns, it's about the stability, it's about the consistency that we have seen over the 30 years. No changes, not a single typo change to the PSA. Those are things that are very valuable to any company that's investing for the long term.
Gary, with your permission, I just will make some comment. Today at 2 o'clock we have a session where we have invited third-party service providers, technology owners, where we will give this message that BP, SOCAR, and all other partners are believing in the future of the Caspian Basin. There are a lot of new projects, and that's why we have to work together, we have to work closely, and that will be one of the key messages at that session.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to turn to you for the last word, but I guess you just offered it. Anything else to add? Perfect final.
No, I think most important is there is great level of understanding between the partners, and in that sense, it's related to operations in the Caspian, operations worldwide, and in that sense, having such a good, reliable partners, I think there is nothing that cannot be achieved.
Thank you. So thank you all for being here, for paying such nice, close attention. I can see in the crowd, people are really paying attention. It's time for lunch. I don't know much about the logistics of this, but I think we're due back here at 2:30 for the next panel. If that's wrong, some organizer yell at me and say, no, we're supposed to come back earlier. In the meantime, thank you. Thank you so much. Roshan, Mr. President, thank you. Great panelists. And thank you, BCG, too, as a sponsor.